Hey everybody, thanks for joining me for the review of the Super Soco TC Max. So with thanks to Super Soco themselves, I've had the TC Max on loan for 2 weeks. It's been about 12 days at this point that I'm making the review. I'm going a couple of days early because the weather's about to change. I've already done quite a few videos on this bike. The first ride, a range test to see what it was like just riding it flat out, and a range test to see what we could get maximum range. And I will cover a little bit of that in this, but I do think if you're going to buy one of these bikes, watch the whole series of videos. So let's start at the top. The price is about £5,000 and a bit, but if you get the grant, it's about £4,500. There's a government grant that allows you to get some money off of electric vehicles. It is CBT legal. It's only producing about 7 brake horsepower. Now, that's not a lot compared to a petrol bike of the CBT range. There are bikes ranging from about 7 up to about 15, which is the limit. However, usability-wise, this is actually fine, as you'll see, for what its niche is, because that's kind of the point of this bike. It isn't a bike to do the job of a petrol 125. It's its own thing. It is a small electric commuter motorcycle, but it's actually a really good laugh to ride. So we've got 17-inch rims on this with disc brakes front and back, and that is a link braking system. Now, from what I can tell from using it, the standard brake lever is obviously the front, but it is giving you a little bit of back as well. The left-hand one, which would be your clutch on a normal bike, is actually mostly rear brake with a little bit of front involved in that as well, it would seem. I am 6'4", and, I do look a little bit silly on it maybe, but it actually does the job absolutely fine. It is a very light bike. The alarm's going off again. And to just demonstrate how light I mean, it's about 100 kilos, I believe, and most of that is the battery pack, which extends from the top here all the way down, and that is removable without any tools. You just use the key, take the seat off, turn the main breaker off, pop this open, unplug it and pull it out. As I say, I'm going to do a video showing that whole process rather than making this video overly long. But just know that yes, you can remove the battery, take it into your work and charge it. There is also space for the standard charger underneath here, which charges the bike in about 7 to 8 hours. There is a quick charger, which is about £270 plus delivery, if I remember rightly. It's around the £300 mark anyway, that allow you to charge the battery in more like 4 to 5 hours. Now, obviously, being electric, very little maintenance. Belt driven, which is always a plus because there's not a lot of maintenance in those. And it doesn't have a gearbox, obviously, because it's like an automatic, but this does have a switch, which I'll show you when I cover the controls. Okay, so using the TC Max, it has this keyless system, but this isn't something that picks up the range. This just locks and unlocks the bike, and when you turn it off, it automatically resets the alarm and the anti-theft devices. You also have this key here. You put it in down here, you turn it this way, and that allows you to get the seat off, and there is your main power breaker. So if you want to turn this bike off completely, you switch it off there, and then that pops back on like there we go. The lock-up of the seat is a bit flimsy. It hasn't come off or anything like that, but, I'd like to see it a little bit better fitted than that. Turn it the other way, and it pops up here. And this is where your charger can live. The standard charger can live in here. I'm not sure if the quick charger actually fits inside. I will find that out in the video when I show you the proper battery removal and things like that, because under here we have the battery itself. It's got a quick detach clip here. There's a lock here that locks it in, and you can take that out. As I say, I'm going to do a video of its own covering that. Now, I mentioned anti-theft. It does have a separate steering lock down here, but the way that this works is that when it's off and the alarm is on, if you try and move this bike in any way, it will start sounding the alarm. I'm going to try and move it. You can see the alarm's going off, and it actually kind of tries to stop you stealing it by locking the rear wheel. Now you can actually just push past that and it will give up for a moment and then it will come back and start again like that. So although it's actually not really stopping anyone stealing it, if you're walking down the road and the bike keeps setting an alarm off and it keeps locking the rear wheel up and they're kind of like fighting it down the road, it tells you something. It's probably not right. So it will highlight to people that someone's pushing this bike away. Now, the downside to this system is the fact that if the key fob battery dies, you have no way of turning that alarm off at all. And it would seem that there isn't a backup key ignition anywhere for this, so this truly is working on the fob. It's a CR2032 battery. I suggest sticking one in your wallet or in your bag or under the seat or something so you've always got a spare on you. The key obviously does the seats and the tank/battery cover. But say this were to die and you didn't have a replacement battery at hand, obviously trying to push it with the alarm going off is a pain in the butt. My suggestion is take the seat off, turn the breaker off, put the seat back on, and then you can push it completely normally. That's also one of the reasons why the seat being a bit loose is something that concerns me, because it means if you can get that seat off, you can switch the switch and you can then just push it away without any of the alarm stuff going on. Sure, at the end of the day, if someone wants to steal a bike, they're going to steal a bike, but I do honest reviews, and if I find something I think that's interesting or see a way that's something you should be aware of, I'm going to point it out. And that's one of the things that I've noticed. Charging point for the battery itself is here, or you can do it directly on top of the battery, as I'll show you in that video. Okay, so the controls. Apologise for the slightly different location. I kind of forgot to put my camera on before. Whoops. Okay, so the controls are quite simple. We have the rear brake and some front brake on this side. We have the front brake mostly on this side with a little bit of rear brake, it would seem. Throttle, high beam, low beam. This is the indicator switch, which is a switch to cancel, not a push to cancel. Didn't like that to start with, got used to it. Horn. It's a cute little horn. This switch here is for, well, it's to turn the lights off entirely, but if you're in Europe, this doesn't do anything because we're not allowed to turn our daylight running lights off. We only got high beam and low beam. Kill switch here, which basically is just like a kill switch. Even though it's on, it won't go. Smack it again and we'll go. And the last thing is this little switch here, which says shift on it, but it's not gears as such. It just limits your top speed. It doesn't even seem to limit your torque, because pulling away in 1, 2 and 3 seems the same, but what speed it will reach is different. 1 is about 30 to 35, 2 is about 40 to 45, and 3 is the maximum speed of this bike, which I will mention in a minute. Now, as I say, operation of this bike is you use the fob to unlock it. This isn't range sensing, so you have to get this out of your pocket every single time, which is kind of annoying. This is more just like an unlock fob. So we unlock it and turn it on, and that can go back in our pocket. On the display it says ready, which means we're ready to go. If you had it in the park mode, it would come up saying you can't go there. And the same thing happens if you have the side stand down like that, it won't go. On the screen itself, we have what position for the gear, as it were, we're in, and that adjusts the range, as you can see here. It says I have 52 miles in 1, but I only have 26 in 3. Total miles this bike has done, 764. We've got the battery percentage here. We're currently at 60%. I've not made sure this is juiced up to 100 to get extra performance. It seems to perform the same throughout the range, but when it gets to 0, it's dead. Although towards the end, I did notice that 1 was getting you 30 rather than 35, and 2 was getting you 40 rather than about 45. As we are going to go for a ride, press the button, turn it on, kick the side stand up, and away we go. Very easy to control. As I say, it's just the throttle. There is no engine braking on this because it has no regen, so you don't regen any of the battery's power and get some engine braking type effects from that. This is just roll on when you roll off, as you can see. But that obviously is good for efficiency. Okay, well good. We'll get the pull away here in position 1. Full throttle. 20, 30, and we're holding, oh no, we're just going over 30, about 33, something like that. I'm now going to put it into power mode 3 because I'm about to go onto a dual carriageway to show you the top speed. Handling, as you can see, is absolutely fantastic. It's kind of like a bicycle because it's so light. This has got quite thin wheels. Okay, we are now in full power and we're already up to 40. 45, 50. Now I should mention here, I'm 6'4", 95 kilos. The maximum speed I've had out of this was about 62, 63 miles an hour. And I think that might be better for some people who are a little lighter than me. I think you might get closer to something like, well, I don't know, because they do give the figure of 60 miles an hour as its top speed. So maybe weight's not such a hindrance. But if you're an owner of a TC Max, I'd love to know what top speed you've had out of yours. But currently we are doing 63, 64. I'm going to try and keep my distance a little bit because I want to come off here. You know, it's got torque, but it's not really punchy torque. You kind of have to let this bike wind up a bit. Brakes are very effective and very nice, and that's one of the things I'm very happy that Super Soco made sure that they did. That is on something like this that doesn't have engine braking, it has fantastic brakes, and they are quite difficult to get them to lock up. I've not got the front to lock up. Basically, if you're normal braking, you use the normal front brake. If you're slowing down and you want a lot more power, you use the rear one as well. Or you might do that in slower speeds and stuff, but because you have the linked brakes, you're still using front and back no matter when you're doing it. It's just the bias, as it were. Right, we're on a 40 mile an hour road, so I've put it in position 1 because I don't want to go any faster than that, and I can just go to full throttle, and I'm not going to do more than about 35. This bike is made for a niche, and that niche for me is intercity commuting. What has really limited this bike for me is the range. Super Soco's claim is that this bike can get 60 miles of range at 30 miles an hour. Now, I've done a video riding this absolutely flat out, up and down hills, you know, and it did 38 miles. I then rode it on the flat, in town and city, much more carefully, using the lower power modes, etc. And I got 42 miles. Not as big of a jump up as I was hoping. I thought I was riding pretty carefully, and it would seem I wasn't. Sure, as I say, I think my weight might have something to do with that. But it just seems a long way away. 42 miles to 60. I just seems a long way away. As I say, if you hyper mile it, if you're in town and city, if you really can keep it below 30 miles an hour, yeah, I can probably see that, because you can notice the miles in range falling away when you're going faster. But it tends to be when you need to just keep up with other traffic on the road. As I say, handling is amazing. This bike can out-handle its speed. Well, that's how it feels anyway to me, which means that it's always capable of turning tighter. Very, very nice to ride. The ride itself is quite bumpy. It is a firm ride, and that is because it's an electric, and to my understanding they tend to put firmer suspension on them, on firmer wheels, tyres and things like that, because it gets you more miles. As I say, performance-wise, this bike is brilliant fun to ride, really good fun. Watch the video where I called the real-world range test. I had an absolute blast riding this in the country roads. However, most people are going to use this to commute, and it depends very much on how far you live from work, obviously, whether this will be a viable option. But yeah, personally, I think if your commute is more than 20 miles in each direction, you're going to want to have the charger or a charger at work to be able to charge it in between shifts. Now, as I say, the standard charger is 7 to 8 hours to fully charge the battery. The quick charger is 4 to 5. If you have the quick charger, that's probably enough to charge it in most people's work shifts, but if you work shorter hours and you have the quick charger with you, you can, you know, because you're not going to 0 if you're only doing 20 miles in. You're just topping it back up to make sure you've got enough to come back the other way. If your mileage fits within that, if you know, commute maybe 10 miles to work a day, 15 miles, this thing is brilliant. Okay, it's a bit more than a petrol 125, and people will make comparisons to petrol 125s. This isn't a petrol 125, this is an electric bike. This isn't about beating petrols, this is about being a replacement for petrols when we no longer have them because of the change in rules that will outlaw petrol engines in around 2035, 2040. Although motorcycles aren't actually included on that at the moment, we all know that's the way that everything's going to go. So yes, I know people want to compare them to petrols. It's not a petrol. It's not going to compete with petrols really, because it's going to replace them eventually. Now at this point in time we are early days, early adoption, and I've ridden some other electric bikes as you've seen which have got better performance than this, and you can still ride them on a CBT, but the price was £10,000. But interestingly, it had about double the performance and about double the range. So it's quite linear, the cost. This is what, you know, more like 125 money can get you right now. It's the battery technology. That's the main cost of these bikes. And of course people will say, well, how long does the battery last? My God, this is a very, very bumpy road, if you can't tell. Christ. These bikes come with a 3-year battery warranty that basically says that the battery will last at least 3 years, otherwise the company have to replace it. Should you need a new battery after that date, for this bike it's about £1,500 plus VAT, I believe. So it's an expensive chunk, and it is a big proportion of the cost of the bike. However, a lot of people talk about these things as if these batteries last 3 years and then that's it, you've got to get a new one. Not the case. I don't know what the claims for this are, but for an example, Zero claim 200,000 miles out of their battery packs and still remain 80% of the capacity. So yeah, I don't know what the Super Soco's claim is for that. They may not actually have a claim for that, but just let you know that batteries don't fall apart in 3 years, it would seem. If you take into account the fact that you're not paying road tax on this, you're not paying for servicing, because there really isn't any, you're not paying for oil changes, you're not paying for chains and sprockets and things like that. Sure, you have to change belts, but that's not very regular. Really, the only thing you're doing on this is greasing bearings, occasionally maybe, and changing the brake pads. I do think that the extra cost of this over something else can be gained back over time. And well, of course, let's not forget the running costs. The running costs of this bike are around a penny a mile, depending on what your tariff is and things like that, but it's around a penny a mile. My DRZ 400 SM I worked out is 10p a mile, minimum. I've actually really been enjoying having these little bikes because I can actually save a fair amount of money in the couple of weeks that I'm using them and charging them at home. And I can't say I've noticed any particular difference on the electricity bill because, you know, you run the washing machine a couple of times, it's probably far more than what this is costing you to run. Now, this is a CBT bike, but I don't actually think this is what the bike's necessarily intended for. I think quite a lot of the people who buy this is people who've got full licenses. If they just want a little cheap runaround that sits in the garage, very low maintenance, that means they don't have to fire up their larger CC bike and get that running, get it dirty in the winter, things like that, if they just pop into the shops. These are a very viable option. Now, obviously, a small petrol scooter could also do this, but the fact that it doesn't really cost you anything to run, you don't have to take it to a petrol station, it just plugs in. Pretty convenient. This bike is both very practical if it suits your needs, and totally impractical if it doesn't. And that's the truth of it. If an electric can do a job for you, they can be fantastic for you. If it's not going to do the range you need, it's just not going to do the range you need, and there's nothing that can really be done about that. Well, there is. I believe Super Soco sell a scooter version, and it has 2 battery packs, or has space for 2 battery packs. That's something I will be getting in the future. But this is what I love about this thing. The handling on it is just, it's like a push bike. You just feel like you can lean and lean and lean, and I've never felt it lose any grip and scare me. Headlights. I have a little snippet of footage to show you what the headlights are like at night. Okay, so the lights on the Super Soco. This is the low beam. It's fine in front of me, but it's not that great in the distance. This is high beam. That is much more usable, but to be honest with you, I'd probably say the high beam is more like a low beam. So you're probably going to want to use this in the high beam all of the time. I mean, around cities, you know, where it's lit in the roads, this is fine, but yeah, you need the high beam for this bit. So if you run this bike on high beam all the time, I don't blame you. And I don't think anyone else is really going to give you any trouble for it because it's not that much brighter. Okay, let's give you a little brake test from 30. So if you're interested in buying one of these bikes, I suggest watching the whole set of videos. The first ride, the 2 range tests, this one, and as I say, I'm also going to do a video showing you how this charges, showing you the chargers, and showing you how to remove that battery pack. It's a big thing, and if you do need to take your bike into work to charge it, take the battery into your work to charge it, opposed to being able to charge it in your bike, it's worth knowing it's a big, heavy thing. But it is easily removed, as you'll see in the video. If you found this video interesting or useful, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new here, I'd really appreciate it. And if you want to help this channel out, it's made possible by the support of my patrons. Without them, this channel would not exist. And it's for that reason I'm very grateful to them, and their names go up at the end of the video and they get videos early. All sorts of other little bits and pieces to benefits. Check it out, I'd really appreciate if you get on board with that one. It can cost as little as $1 a month. And thank you to Super Soco for lending me the bike for a couple of weeks to do a proper test on it. You know, you can ride these things for 5 minutes and have a sort of an opinion on them, but it's very different when you use it day to day. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.